Hey guys, welcome and thanks for choosing the Scrum Advanced training course. Scrum is a simple method for managing and completing even the most complex project. Based on my experience, it has also been the #1 reason why projects have delivered on time. Whether you are a Scrum Master, project manager, product owner, team member, or simply someone who wants the answer to the question, how do I take Scrum to the next level? This class is for you. If you are a program manager preparing to deliver a program with Scrum of Scrums, this is definitely the class for you. As well as CEO of Passion Consulting Limited, I have experience in international companies dating back to 1999. That includes experience leading projects for the BBC, General Electric, Oracle, B-Sky-B, Razorfish, and Hit Entertainment, among others. I have put together this course using excellent top quality voiceovers to give you real examples with crystal clear quality. In this class you will learn how I became a Scrum Master in 7 easy steps, how to explain Scrum and influence stakeholders, managers and teams with 72 reasons covering every rule, role and Scrum meeting, and finally, you will learn how to coordinate multiple teams in a program using the Scrum of Scrums method. So there you have it. Click the button to take this course now and let me guide you on how to use Scrum with advanced techniques in your team or business. See you on the inside.
Introduction. Scrum. Introduction and recap. Scrum theory. History repeats itself unless you do something about it. Scrum is based on empirical process control theory. The idea is very simple, so do not let the name worry you. It consists of 3 principles: transparency, inspection, and adaptation. The idea is that the Scrum team agree to be transparent, honest in all that they do on the project. Being transparent means that functionality is not done until it meets the development team's definition of done. Transparency builds trust between the team members. Once the team have agreed on transparency, they agree to consistently check up on progress, inspection, and make improvements based on what they have seen, adaptation. These can be improvements in practices, sticking to values, communication, or otherwise. This is powerful stuff in industry, the ability to consistently inspect and adapt. In that way, they are improving time and time again before, during, and after the release of a product. This is something that was not possible with the waterfall model of development. Scrum skeleton. The Scrum skeleton is a very quick and easy way to explain the process to someone, so I will use it to explain the process to you. On the left side of the skeleton, we see the product backlog, which is nothing more than a list of all the features and their acceptance criteria that the business desires for the product. A subset of that backlog, called the sprint backlog, is taken on by the team, broken down into tasks, and worked on in an iteration called a sprint. A sprint is a period of time less than 30 days in length, and in that time, the team work on their tasks until they develop a working increment of the product. Remember those many phases of the waterfall I described earlier? Well, this is where it all takes place. There is some requirements gathering and specification update before the sprint, then design, implementation, and testing. Above the large sprint circle, you will see a smaller circle. This represents the fact that every day the team meet to inspect on progress and adapt their plan for the day in a daily Scrum meeting. At the end of a sprint, the potentially shippable increment of the product is delivered. The business can review the increment in a sprint review and then release the new features to the world, if they so wish. The team then discuss, transparently, their progress during the sprint in a sprint retrospective, inspect, so they can improve adapt on things that need improvement or retain things that are going well. The cycle then begins again and repeats until the product owner has nothing more to add to the product backlog. The Scrum skeleton demonstrates the simplicity and power of Scrum as a mini factory, churning out shippable features each sprint. These concepts can be applied to any team or indeed individual who needs to deliver a project. As I'm sure you can imagine, becoming a Scrum Master involves far more than simply understanding the Scrum rules. For me, becoming a Scrum Master was a journey that began with regular project work and ended with the ability to coach others based on my experiences of doing things with and without Scrum. The purpose of this class is to guide a potential Scrum Master through the steps I recommend, explaining why those steps are important. By the time you have taken this class, you will be given an excellent set of steps to follow if you want to become a Scrum Master, examples of the kind of experiences that helped me to become a Scrum Master, pointers from a 10-year-strong Scrum expert. Step 1. Get knowledge of another methodology. It may seem unusual when I say that it is just as important to understand the world without Scrum as it is to understand how Scrum has changed the world. The reason I say this is that to really appreciate the benefits of any methodology or framework, it is very important to understand the pitfalls and benefits of other methods. Now, this can be from the point of view of a team member, project manager, analyst, or product specialist, but it should be from the point of view of someone close to the project life cycle. On software projects, which usually run in cycles of 3 months to a year, I recommend at very least 6 months of working in another methodology so that you can see its pattern. Let me tell you how I gained knowledge of another methodology so that you can see how this knowledge made me value Scrum in the end. I began working on projects as a software developer, web developer, using the waterfall method. From my perspective, the project cycle began when my line manager, the team lead, assigned me to a particular project. In that company, it was good practice to sit with your project team, so that is what I did, and that is where I met the other team members. At first, the technical lead on the project assigned me a set of tasks and directed me to a technical guideline document. I owned the code related to these tasks myself, and other team members had to consult me on it. Other team members only had input if I said so, and vice versa. We were briefed on the deadline date, but only one person, the project manager, had visibility of our schedule. His estimates came from speaking to the technical lead. However, the tech lead did not know how quickly I would be able to work, so he took an educated guess. Periodically, the project manager would hold meetings to find out how we were getting on, but he rarely asked how near the deadline we were, though sometimes he would tell us. On most projects, the deadline would slip since estimates were not based on any team feedback, and the absence of certain team members would often stall progress since only they knew how to fix issues with their code. The project manager would often multiply the tech lead estimates by 3 as contingency, so a 1-day estimate would be logged as 3 days in the plan. But even then, the pressure from the business meant that the estimates were ignored. Our code was rarely tested since testing was seen as an afterthought. On my first project, the test team was not employed until halfway through. And for this reason, there were large numbers of live issues. We often worked late nights to meet tough deadlines, but still got the job done in the end, even if later than planned. Step 2. Get Scrum project experience and reassess your values. After gaining solid project knowledge in at least one other methodology, you should have a good basis on which to compare to other methodologies, such as Scrum. I recommend getting a copy of the Scrum Guide or one of my other guides, reading it thoroughly, and then inquiring after project experience within your department, organization, or other organization. You need an opportunity in a department that's willing to allow you to either be a fly on the wall or work directly as part of the project team. This will allow you to compare the daily, monthly, and per-project methods of a Scrum project with that of your previous non-Scrum projects. The knowledge from this comparison is what will give you the capacity to coach and help others. Let me tell you how I gained project experience so that you can see how this knowledge made me a better Scrum Master in the end. My first Scrum project, which was actually an agile project using most of the Scrum practices, began when I moved from the agency to the BBC as a software engineer. On my first day, I was asked to come in just in time for our stand-up meeting, Daily Scrum. At the meeting, my new team lead reminded the team that the stand-ups were for us rather than him, and that we needed to run them without him if he was absent or busy. After that, we focused on a task board, and each team member said what they were working on the previous day, and then ticked the tasks that they had completed on the board. They then picked the tasks that were due to work on that day. Following this, each member flagged any issues that came up as part of their work, and the team lead advised. Initially, I was asked to work with one of my new colleagues, pair programming with her, so that we could share knowledge. I learned a lot on the first day and also shared some of my expertise from previous companies with her. Every day, we could see progress on the task board with ticked task cards, and the producer, product owner in a media company, would often attend stand-up meetings to see how we were getting on. Though we did not always finish all tasks, we took this as a point of learning, and the business always knew how far away we were from our goal. The pair programming and teamwork meant that we reduced the likelihood of a single point of failure, and we had a mix of generalists and specialists. We worked closely with the testers who were involved with the project from the get-go, meaning that bugs were raised and resolved very early. Instead of focus on a big date, we worked in 1-week iterations and demoed the results to the product owner after each iteration. This was still building to a big date, but allowed the product owner to have something deliverable every week. Step 3. Become a certified Scrum Master. After you have an understanding of the methodology other than Scrum, and you have also lived and breathed Scrum for a while, I recommend 6 months to a year, but it all depends on your aptitude. The next step is to become a certified Scrum Master. There are 2 bodies I recommend to get your certification from. These are trusted bodies as they were set up by the founders of Scrum: Scrum Alliance and the CSM certification. The first certification is the Certified Scrum Master CSM course from Scrum Alliance. You have to take a training course with one of the officially authorized training centers before you can sit the exam and get this certification. On this course, you will be given an overview of the Scrum rules, get to ask the trainer questions, and finally, you will be tested on what you have learned. You will see that you have lived a lot of what you discuss, but the trainer will help you to understand the what-ifs and answer questions such as, how do I get buy-in for Scrum in my organization? The test is usually based on what you are taught on the course and should therefore be straightforward. Note: there are numerous organizations that offer this certification, but I recommend you stick to Scrum Alliance via one of the official training centers or scrum.org. I personally got certified after 3 years of working in Scrum teams. Back then, the course had no test, just a pledge to follow the Scrum rules. We stayed in a hotel with excellent refreshments. On the 2-day course, the trainer explained the foundation of Scrum and the goal of enhancing the team's productivity. We reenacted the Scrum time boxes, daily Scrum meeting, sprint planning meeting, sprint retrospective, and sprint review, and we were coached on how to improve them. In one example, I remember that we were given the sprint goal of creating a marketing pamphlet for a dog's home. Weird, I know. We worked as a team to discuss the product, create a backlog of requirements, stories, prioritize them, and task them up before working on the most important ones first. I got into a debate around the fact that I thought the top priority was to research the facts behind the pamphlet, so at least then the brand was tied to some form of reality. My team member argued that a good-looking pamphlet was far more important than substance because at least it would leave the shelves. In the end, the team agreed with him, so I decided to let the team go forward and let the proof be in the demo we were about to do, which of course I would let him have the pleasure of doing. It so happened that my team member began well, but when questioned, immediately became tongue-tied. The problem was that since there was no real substance to the pamphlet, he had to make answers up as he went along. That day, I learned that in Scrum teams, every member needs to make his or her opinion count. Most importantly, I learned the value of sensible prioritization. Needless to say that I left the course with a Scrum CSM certificate and I was certified. Note that this training usually costs circa $1,000. Scrum.org and the PSM certification. Scrum.org offer the opportunity to take the Professional Scrum Master certification, PSM, without undergoing training in a classroom. At the time of this document's writing, the cost of sitting the PSM-1 exam is around $100. Both the CSM and PSM exams are recognized in the industry and backed by the founders of Scrum, so I can recommend either. The beauty of the PSM qualification is that you can learn Scrum in your own time, either online or in a classroom, and then sit the exam whenever you like. Step 4. Put your certification into practice. As you may already know, the best way to get yourself a new role or job is to demonstrate that you already have experience in it. Having done a certified Scrum Master course leaves you in an excellent position to apply your knowledge even without being a Scrum Master. You can suggest Scrum practices in debates and speak to your line manager about the benefits of implementing Scrum. If your team is already doing Scrum, you will often find that the rules are not followed when the going gets tough. However, this is precisely when Scrum is most powerful in controlling chaos. Therefore, you can help to explain the benefits of maintaining the Scrum rules based on your knowledge and certification. The ability to influence and persuade your peers is a very important skill for a Scrum Master. The best way to prove that you are ready to be a Scrum Master is to achieve this persuasion within your team even before you have the job title. When I came back from my Scrum Master certification, I was like a kid with a new toy. I was enlightened by the different perspectives Scrum had and eager to put it into practice within my department. My first port of call was discussing the certification with my team lead. We discussed how a Scrum Master was not an authority figure and the whole idea of self-organizing teams. At the time, it was deemed best for a Scrum Master to be outside the development team. This posed a challenge since our project managers and product owners, who were the key people outside the development team, were not very agile or Scrum-minded, and some were even resistant to Scrum. I decided that the best part I could play was to gently vocalize my newfound knowledge within the team, supporting my senior counterparts and helping colleagues to understand how to write potentially shippable code by making sure that anything we wrote was tested, integrated with everyone else's code, and deployed to a staging environment. These kinds of disciplines gained the attention of my line manager and senior manager, who often commented on my attention to Scrum and Agile practices. I knew that I was on the right path to becoming a Scrum Master. Step 5. Get a voluntary leadership role. Although the role of Scrum Master is not about authority or management of people, there certainly is a strong element of leadership of people and management of the framework. Let me break down the difference. In a traditional project management role, many project managers decide to control and dominate debates, process, and technical decisions since they think they know best. They effectively manage or organize people the way they think is best, often without leveraging the expertise of those people. This is where the Scrum Master role is different. In an opposite manner, a Scrum Master must leave teams the space to organize themselves and then trust in their individual skill sets and experience of teamwork to deliver the correct outcome. So, where is the leadership in the role? Well, it is also important to remember that it is the Scrum Master's role to ask the right questions of the team, coach them on the Scrum rules, and influence them to adhere to the rules. It is also a Scrum Master's role to set an example, keep good time, and practice what he or she preaches. All of these traits are leadership traits, and you will quickly see that people start to speak your language and follow your actions, not because they fear you, but because they understand and respect your leadership via management of the Scrum framework, and because you are helping them to achieve their goal. This is known as servant leadership, since you lead by helping others. Once you have started to deliver the Scrum message to your peers, it is important to make sure that you are very comfortable leading people without managing them. Within 2 months of putting my Scrum certification into practice within my team, my managers had realized my enthusiasm. I had also suggested the idea of technical leads within projects. This was not a practice within our department, which was fairly new. Given my keenness, I was picked as one of the first tech leads. This was my chance to actually become Scrum Master. Tech leading at that time involved hosting stand-ups, running planning meetings, and updating the burn-down chart with team progress. It invoked communication with technical leads from other projects, as well as the need to communicate the benefits of Scrum within the team. The team frequently had a problem with completing all testing. Therefore, I brought forward concepts such as acceptance test business-driven development, BDD, in the name of making the product potentially shippable at the end of each sprint. Now, this gave me a certain amount of recognition and respect within the department, not to mention making the quality assurance experts happy. After all, the projects I worked on as a tech lead were my first experience of being a Scrum Master. Though my official job title was software engineer, I had managed to volunteer myself into a role that gave me the perfect experience for my next job. Step 7. Stick to the rules. The seventh step is for some people the most difficult to carry out, and no example can make it easier. After having learned the rules of Scrum, you will now need to make sure that regardless of the characters you meet, the deadlines imposed by an ambitious business client, or the reluctance of the individuals you meet, you continue to maintain the simple Scrum rules. Believe me when I tell you that many have tried and failed to do this. Remember that strength of character is one of the key traits of a Scrum Master, and that these situations will at times test your strength of character. But, ironically, as long as you trust in the experience and rules of Scrum, you will see that everyone who challenged it and disbelieved in it will eventually thank you for holding strong and value your presence. Finally, you will feel fulfilled in your role, and your journey to become a Scrum Master will have been made well worth it.